Welcome back to the Keys to Success podcast. You got your girl Tilisa in the house. What's going on? We got my girl Deba. Deba, how's it going, girl?
It's going good. How are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right. I'm excited about this podcast episode because, first of all, it's one of the real estate strategies that I really gravitated to the most. Everybody has their favorites. You know what I mean? Some people love the to do the fix and flip. Some people love wholesaling, which I wholesale. I love wholesaling, but something about creative finance, it really opened up my eyes to the possibility of, wow, like more people can own real estate than what they think. And just in particular, people in my family alone have struggled with credit, and they've struggled with, not being on their jobs long enough. And I think honestly, out of all like my first cousins, there's only me and another cousin who actually, bought a house when we were ready to, own real estate. And so knowing this creative finance is out there, I just want to make sure that the viewers, anybody who may have been turned down, if you ever went to a bank to get a mortgage loan and they said that your credit wasn't high enough, or that you weren't on your job long enough, or that you needed to put down 20%, down, and you didn't have that. Like, if those were any of the barriers that you experienced, I want you to know about creative finance. So that's where I wanted to start at today.
Yes, and I will tell you guys, if y'all are listening, if you are not driving, get you a pen, pencil, pad, something to write down, because a lot of people don't know about creative financing, and this is your opportunity to truly change the game for you. If you are a real estate investor, or a striving real estate investor that you want to get started, and maybe your credit is not the best, and maybe you don't have a lot of capital, Tilisa is really going to drop the gems of exactly how she does creative financing. Trust me, whenever I have a creative financing deal that's a potential, Tilisa is my guru of who I go to for all things of trying to figure this out. So I am so excited. I have my pen and paper ready to do this because I'm going to learn today.
Yes, 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 yes. So let me just start off by saying, like I said, if you've ever been denied, property ownership, then creative finance is going to give you an opportunity to look at real estate purchasing in an entirely different lens. And so, the first one that I want to talk, because there's different strategies, right? But the first thing I want to talk about is, what is creative finance? Typically, the traditional way of purchasing real estate, you go to a lender. The lender asks you for your pay stubs, your W-2s, they run your credit, all this stuff. And then they come back and say, hey, you're qualified for this amount, right? Or they say, you don't qualify for a mortgage right now. Maybe you can, buy a house in 6 months. We'll start working on your credit. So that's the traditional way, and what a lot of people know as the way to buy real estate. And the cool thing about seller financing or creative finance is it removes those barriers in a way that you don't have to have any of those things, and you can still purchase real estate. And so one of my favorite exit strategies is called seller finance, what some people like to call seller carry or owner carry. And so when we think about seller financing, you guys would not believe how many people actually own their houses like outright. Like they don't owe a mortgage. They're not making, the only payments that they're making are taxes and taxes and insurance. Like, that's it.
Mhm.
When I started in my real estate investing journey, I was oblivious to how many people actually own their properties outright, just because people that I knew didn't own their properties outright. Everybody had a mortgage, right?
Right.
Everybody had a mortgage. And so but when you do own your property outright, you can actually play the bank. And what I mean by that is, let's say you own a property and you don't owe any money on it, and you want to sell your property. You could sell your property to a buyer, and they don't have to get lending from a bank because you are serving as the bank. So instead of those payments going to a bank, those payments are going to go to you. So let's say your house is worth like 400, I mean, let's say you want like $400,000 for your house, right? Well, you can sell it and ask your buyer for a down payment. They'll give you that down payment, and then they're going to give you monthly payments, including interest payments that you get to choose as the seller. So the some people are like, well, why would somebody want to sell their property like this? What's the benefit to a seller? And there's many benefits. So let's say like maybe there's somebody who owns a piece of property and they're a landlord, right? And what maybe their tenants are late. Maybe they're dealing with like plumbing issues. They're dealing with all the issues. They like the cash flow that being a landlord provides them, but they don't necessarily like the headache of being a landlord, right? And so this kind of person, they may be interested in seller financing. And why is that? Because they're still going to be able to get monthly payments every single month, just like they would have if they were renting it out. But instead of them having to deal with the headache of the tenant, having to deal with the taxes and insurance, they just get to collect a check every single month. And so for some people, that's very appetizing. For one, they still get to cash flow, and then second, they can defer their capital gains tax. And so I know I'm getting into some more complex jargon. So let me explain what that is real quick. So when you sell a property, just like anything that you sell, you have to pay taxes on it, right? If you buy something, you pay taxes. If you sell something, you pay taxes. Well, the more valuable the item is or the property is that you're selling, the higher capital gains tax the government is going to want you to pay for that sale, right? Well, the cool thing about seller finance is that the seller actually gets to defer their capital gains tax when they sell this way, right? And so they're not hit with that huge tax burden right after they sell their property. Now, at some point, they will have to pay taxes on that. But depending on how long the term is that you and the seller, decide that you guys are going to hold this note for, that will determine when they're going to need to pay those capital gains. And so that's another reason why a seller would be interested in doing something like this. And so I love it. I really do, because it's like a win-win on both ends. You know what I mean?
Yes, yes. And listening to that, one, you actually are helping the landlord, the owner, because maybe they love having tenants, but they don't want to deal with the headache of maintenance issues. So you're able to come in and still be a resource where they can still make some money, and you're resolving their issue of them not dealing with the tenants, but then you take that on and you make money. And now you now have a profitable property, and you're making money with little to no money down. Doesn't matter what your credit is. And where do you go that you can go to a bank and you can set up the terms and you can say, oh, I don't want these terms. Let's find something else that makes sense for both of us. You don't do
Nowhere.
that. Nowhere.
Nowhere but in this scenario here. And even if they don't, even if you don't want to be a real estate investor, maybe you just want to buy a residential property for yourself. Well, I guarantee you that your monthly payment is going to be so much less doing a purchasing creatively versus you purchasing the traditional way, because you guys are able to work out those terms. You can negotiate a 2% interest rate. You can negotiate a 3%. You can negotiate a 0% interest rate, you guys.
Yes. Yes.
0%. You can negotiate $0 down. You can negotiate those things. Not saying that every seller will be open to that, but those are the possibilities that you have when you do purchase creatively. And so I know like many people are like, well, dang, like, how do we even find, these sort of deals, or how do we even find these sort of sellers? That's so crazy, because just yesterday I was on Facebook. I was on the Facebook market, and I was looking at, properties in this Virginia area that I'm in. and I saw 4 properties where it was like for sale by owner, open to seller financing. Like, and they're letting you know, like, right then and there, like, no credit, no this, no that, this is what our down payment requirement is. We want this much a month. Like, they're letting you know. And so off the bat, like, oh, okay, wait, I might be able to work out these terms, but if not, I might be able to negotiate and get them to come down on their down payment. I maybe get them to reduce their interest payment. But I would say if you want to find out if there's any owners in your area that be open to this, go to the Facebook market, type in,
Yes.
properties in this area and start to look. I guarantee you some of those are going to say for sale by owner,
Yes. And so talk to us about, let's say, now you've already showed us how we find these deals, Facebook Marketplace. When you do see that, how do we know as us as the buyer if it's a good deal or not? How do you assess if it's a good deal?
Okay, so depending on whether you're an investor or whether you are just wanting to move into something residentially, um, if you're an investor, you are going to want to make sure that you're actually getting a good return on your investment. And so the first thing that I do, because I find these deals and I basically present them to buyers who would be interested, buyers who didn't want to take out the time to find the properties, buyers who didn't want to take out the time to work out the terms. And so when I'm looking at these properties, one of the first things I look at is what are the rental rates in the area? And this is very simple. All you need to do is get the property address, you go into Zillow, put that address in there, and then Zillow will show you what the estimated rents are in that area. So let's say like the estimated rents are like $2,400 a month. Okay, cool. I'll write that number down. The second thing I'm going to look at is, okay, how much are the taxes, a year? And I'm going to divide that up into 12, right? How much is the insurance per month? And then if I'm also considering, paying them a principal payment, the seller, then I'm also going to include that payment in there. So if we're to pay them $900 a month, I'm going to deduct all these expenses from that rent number, right? And so when I'm looking at that bottom line, I typically my investors, they typically like to see that number between $500 to $700 in positive cash flow. Okay.
Okay.
And so that's a quick and easy way that you can just see whether this is a profitable property. And if those numbers, if you're doing the numbers and the rents are 1,900, you're paying the seller 1,400, and it's all totaling up to like $1,800, and you only have like $100 in cash flow, is probably not going to be the smartest investment because there's still other expenses that we're not considering, other things that may just come up. And so you could see yourself taking a loss if you don't get those numbers up in like the $500 to $700, profit range.
That makes sense. That makes sense because you do want to make a profit. If you're going to take on dealing with tenants, dealing with whoever is going to be living in the home, maybe you set it up as Airbnb, you definitely have to make sure it makes sense for you money wise. So let's say we do all this and we're looking at the numbers and we're like, oh, I'm only cash flowing like $200. What would be the best way or course of action to go back to the seller? What do you say? You don't just say, hey, what's up? I can't do this. Like, I need you to bring it. Like, how do you negotiate that?
Yeah, and so one of the cool things about creative finance is, especially when you're doing a seller finance, is you can actually offer the seller more money in
Mhm.
return for a lower monthly payment. And so let's say, we were originally going to pay 400,000 for the property, and the our cash flow is only $200 a month. Well, I might go back to the seller and say, okay, so the numbers are a little tight for me. I'm more focused on cash flow because I know that we're going to be holding on to this property, and in 10 years we're going to refinance, and I know the home is going to appreciate by that 10-year mark. So I'm willing to give you $20,000 more than what your asking price is if you would be willing to lower your monthly payment $200, $300. And so a lot of the times they'll say, okay, we'll do something like that because they're getting more money. They're getting more than their asking price. And
Right.
if they're charging you interest payments, then they're making more than what, the asking price and the higher offer that you gave them. They're going to probably be making about, if we told them that we were going to pay $420,000 for their property, and they charge us maybe like a 2 to 3% interest rate, they're going to make anywhere between 440, maybe $450,000 off of us, right?
Right. Right.
So, but for us, we're not really too much worried about that because, like I said, we're in it for the long haul. A lot of investors, they're not in it to just be in it for 5 years and then sell the property. If anything, you'll be in it for 5 years, refinance, and then, just keep doing that process over and over again. And so purchasing it at a higher price makes sense when you're doing something creatively versus when you're doing like a fix and flip. With a fix and flip,
Right.
it's imperative that you buy right, that you buy low, because you're going to be turning around, you're going to be renovating it, and then you're going to be putting it back on the market within a couple of months. It's the market, the property is not going to appreciate in value as much as it would if you were to hold on to it for 10 years. And so with creative finance, you can offer the seller more money.
And how does this affect the appraiser or the real value? Does it even matter?
Doesn't matter.
Oh my gosh.
It doesn't.
Listen to that. Like literally all the other things that we talked about on this podcast, everything had stemmed from the ARV. Everything stems for what does the comp say? Everything stems for, well, what is everyone else paying for a similar property? With seller financing, that stuff doesn't matter.
Nope. Doesn't matter. Not at all. And so it's really neat. And so, I mean, seller finance, seller carry, that is just one method of being able to purchase property creatively. But let's say somebody is in a tight situation. Let's say somebody's about to be in foreclosure, and the bank's about to come and take their house. Well, do you know that you can actually take over their mortgage payment without you actually having to apply for the mortgage or do any of those things? You can just take over their mortgage payment, pay whatever their delinquent balance is, and you can purchase that property from them and maybe even give them a little bit of cash, $5,000, $10,000, so that they can move out and get something, have something to live in. But you can literally take over somebody else's property for like small amounts of money.
Yes.
You know
Okay,
what
so
I mean?
this is another strategy. This is a totally different strategy. What do we call this
So,
strategy?
so this strategy is called subject to. This is called
Subject to.
subject to. And this is the art of being able to take over somebody else's mortgage payment that they cannot afford, and you taking over those mortgage payments and them transferring the deed into your name. And so I know some people are like, well, the mortgage is still going to be in my name. It's still going to be, and it's like, yes, the mortgage is still going to be in the seller's name. And so what happens is we make their mortgage payments on their behalf by logging into whatever mortgage system that they're currently using, and we keep up those monthly mortgage payments. We will reach out to the lender. We'll find out what that delinquent balance is, and we'll pay that off. And a lot of the times, people aren't really as delinquent as what you might think. Some people may
Right.
only be delinquent $5,000, but their mortgage payment is $900 a month. So they've been not paying for some time. You know what I mean? And so, but there's so many reasons why somebody would need you to do this. We were talking to a guy not too long ago, and he had just purchased a property, and he was only in it for 2 months, and he ended up getting a job offer in another state that was way better than his current job. And so he was like, yeah, I need to sell this property. And his agent was like, there, you just bought this house 2 months ago. Like, you're gonna lose money. Like, you can't do this. And so when we presented him with the subject to opportunity, it was perfect for him. It was perfect because we were able to come in, take over those payments. He didn't owe anything. He didn't have any delinquent balance that he owed. He just needed to get out of the house, right? And so
Right.
there's different reasons why somebody would benefit from doing a deal like this. And you as the buyer, you get to come into a property that doesn't really need a whole lot. A lot of the times these properties that we're looking at, they're turnkey. And when I say turnkey, meaning like you can move somebody in like tomorrow.
Right. Okay. So, but okay, to my viewers, because they're probably like, man, I want to do that too. Like we heard about seller finance and we want to be all over that subject too. I don't really got to do much and just take over. How do you find them? And what do you say once you find them?
Oh gosh, girl. Okay. So this is what I want all of our viewers to do. I want you, whatever market that you're in, I want you to go to Zillow. I want you to find properties that have been listed for, let's say, 50 days or more, right? I was
Okay.
just looking at Raleigh, North Carolina. They got like 100 properties that have been sitting on the market for 100 plus days. Prime, folks, prime, right?
Wow.
So these people have already been sitting on the market. More than likely, they're either still living in the property, paying the mortgage, or they've already moved out. They're living somewhere else, and they're also paying the mortgage at the property that you're looking at, right?
Okay.
Okay. So, first thing I want you to do is go to Zillow, find properties that are 60 days in the market or more. Okay. After you do that, I want you to uh, take the address and I want you to go to a website called True People Search. And that's just truepeoplesearch.com. This is what I used before I had all my systems that would skip trace and do all those things. So, this is free. Anybody could do this. You're going to put that address into truepeoplesearch.com and it's going to give you the person's name who owns that property, right?
Okay.
Once you find the person's name who owns that property, I'm sorry, also on True People Search is going to give you their phone number. It's going to give you their mobile number and it's going to give you their landline. And so that's the first step. Find the properties that have been on the MLS for 60 days or more, go to True People Search, find out who owns the property and get their phone number, okay? Once you have all those three things, you almost have the recipe that you need to close a deal like this. So once you have all that, the first thing that I do is I have a system called batch leads, which I understand some of you may not, have these different systems. But what I use batch leads for primarily is to find out how much they owe on their current mortgage, right?
Okay.
And so I can see what they owe. I can see how much their monthly payment is. I can see what their current interest rate is. I can see all those things. And so I understand that some of you may not have that. So you're just going to have to contact the seller and try to pry some of those things out. But me, I use those things as my tools when I'm talking to the seller. Okay. And so the first thing that I do, I go to batch leads, I look up all that information, and then I contact the seller. And my conversation to the seller is, "Hey, Mr. Seller, I seen that your property's been on the MLS for 90 days. I'm interested. I'm a potential buyer. Can you kind of tell me what's been going on? Like, why have you guys been on the market so long?" Right? And I always stop right there and I let them kind of speak and let them tell me, because you can get a lot of information out of people when you just kind of put a question out there and let them go for it. And so like today I was having a conversation with somebody and they were just like, actually when I listed my property on the market, it was during a really hot time and the market turned, a month in, and we actually have a tenant in place, and it's been really hard to show the place because there's a tenant there right now. And yeah, and so I'm like, okay, well, wonderful. So what does that tell me? Well, one, that tells me that they're a landlord, right? And what do landlords like? Landlords like cash flow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So landlord likes cash flow. All right, cool. Then what's another thing that I know? I know that they're already motivated to sell their house because their house has been sitting on the market for 90 days. So
There you go.
that's another thing. They have to be motivated, right? Well, I don't have to figure out whether they're motivated because I already know. They're already on there. And so once I know those things, I can say, okay, I'm thinking in my head, well, what solution or which one of these exit strategies is going to be able to benefit this seller the most, right? And so I will have already run my numbers before even contacting the seller. I've already run my numbers. I already figured out how much I can actually pay for this property or how much my investors would pay for this property. I already know what terms I'm able to pitch. And so when they tell me some of those things, I say, okay, well, what if I can give you your full asking price? Because guess what? Everybody else that's called them up until now has given them lowball offers.
Yes.
Everybody. So it's very unlikely that somebody's called them and said, hey, I think I can give you your asking price. So immediately that kind of perks up their, that perks their attention. Okay, you really, you can? Yeah. But tell me a little bit more because you're a landlord, you like the cash flow. Why don't you just keep it as a rental, and then start finding out a little bit more about that? Well, I'm getting up in age and I don't really want to be, dealing with tenants and all this other stuff. And so you kind of start to get a feel for where their temperature is at. And one thing as an investor, our job is to problem solve, right?
Right. Right.
So, although, as an investor, the money is good and a lot of people get into it for the money, at the end of the day, we're here to solve a problem. And I'm not going to present an offer to a seller if I don't feel like it's going to solve their problem. And you know what? And I want to step back for a second because that's the main reason why wholesaling cash deals was an issue for me personally, because when I called a seller and I told them, "Oh, I can give you 50%, a 50% discount, of what you're asking for," the conversation didn't smooth over well. I got hung up on, I got cussed out. This is somebody's house and they have their family dog buried in the backyard. They don't,
Right.
like, this stuff is sentimental. And yet
Yes.
with these lowball offers, it's offensive.
It's offensive.
It's
Yeah.
offensive, and I could feel that. I could feel that. And so that's why I wanted to go into creative, because I'm like, I want to be able to give people what they're asking for. I want to be able to tell them that I can give them their asking price, because that changes the flow of the conversation, right?
Absolutely.
And so once you start talking to a seller and you start hearing what their issues are, then you feel confident knowing that, okay, yeah, my offer is it's going to be sufficient for the seller. Why? Because my offer is going to allow them to continue to cash flow. My offer is going to give them a nice down payment, in which they said they really don't need the cash, but hey, if they'll take an extra $10,000, $15,000. So it's like, when you know that you've got these different strategies and you're able to align them with your seller's problems, you're more likely to be able to convince them, or to not even convince them, to educate them enough to where they will understand that this is something that they can benefit from.
Absolutely. Man. And these both strategies, seller financing and subject to, are the easiest ways to get in, not worried about your credit, not worried about how much capital you have. And even if they're in a situation where the person that they're talking to wants a down payment, what are some of the resources that they can do to get that money so they can close the deal?
So one thing that a lot of investors are doing, a lot of my buyers, they are partnering with other investors. So one investor might come with the capital, while the other investor is the one that found the deal, and they'll like JV on it or something like that. Another way that you can get that down payment is you can raise the money for it. If you have family members or friends who can take a HELOC, and
Yeah.
Deborah, do you want to explain to them what a HELOC is right quick?
Yeah, so a HELOC is a home equity loan that you're taking out on your own homestead property you live in, and you're literally going back to the same bank that you have your mortgage for, and they are literally pulling the equity in out of your home and giving you kind of like I call it like a savings account. You have a savings account, you have about $80,000 of equity. They're literally going to give you $80,000 in a savings account. If you don't use the money, there's nothing that harm, nothing hurts you. You don't have to pay any interest. Let's say you need about 5,000 for a particular deal. You can pull out 5,000 and you're only paying interest only for 5,000. What I love about a HELOC, you don't have to pay the principal back sometimes for 10 to 15 years.
Whew.
So I love a HELOC. That's how I started investing, was with my HELOC, with my equity in my house. So yes, I love a HELOC.
Okay, so that's an amazing way to come up with a down payment. If maybe you yourself are in your own property, do a HELOC. You can pay yourself back once you start getting some of that cash flow. But maybe you want to partner with somebody who's able to, do a HELOC, or maybe they can take some funds from their retirement account or whatever. You know that you're going to be able to pay them back because you've already run the numbers. It's just a matter of opening your mouth and saying, hey, this is what I need, right? Because
Right.
a closed mouth doesn't get fed. And a lot of the times there's probably about 10, 15 people out here that could actually help you and that would actually be willing to help you. But because you're silent about it, you're not getting the help that you need. So you have
That's
to be willing
it.
to ask.
That's it. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I hope you guys had a pen and paper out, because I literally was taking notes of, like, get on Zillow, go and do a filter for 50 days or more on the market. Then you're going in and looking at it. Then you're like, okay, now I got to skip trace. You go out and skip trace and you go to truepeople.com and it's free.
True
And
people search. Yes.
truepeoplesearch.com, and that is free, and you find that person's name. I do want to talk a little about that because it's on the MLS. So there's a realtor. Is there a reason why you did not say just call the realtor?
So in some cases, I will call the realtor. A lot of the properties that we're looking at are for sale by owner,
Mm,
but there are some that are listed by a realtor. And I like interacting with realtors because they're professional, right? They're pleasant. And so that matter of fact, I was just talking to a realtor today, and the property had been sitting on the MLS for about 60 days, and she was very helpful, but she just let me know that the sellers really need the money so that they can take this money and put it into another property. So she said if they didn't need the money, she says I know that they'd be open to something like this. And she says, but you know what, I'm interested. So she was like, if I find anything else, any other sellers that might be open to this, you're like my go-to. I'm going to call you. And I'm like, great. So
beautiful.
although I didn't close a deal with her, she's now in my network, and she's going to be sending me more deals of sellers that could be interested in this. And so talking to agents is not a bad thing. Sometimes it's a little bit easier because they're able to communicate to the client and the client already trusts them. And
Hmm.
so you're just kind of like, you get to have that nice conversational, environment with the agent versus, sometimes when you talk to a seller, they can be a little bit disgruntled. So,
That's true.
but yeah, no. And then another thing that I wanted to say is, even if, let's say, Deba, let's say you own a property, right? And let's say you do want 400,000 and you owe a mortgage of 200,000, right? Well, could we do subject to? Could we do seller finance? Which one is it? Well, they don't own the house outright, but they have some equity and they have a mortgage. So what do? You guys can do what's called a hybrid. And
Mhm.
basically, you are doing a combination of subject to and seller finance all in one transaction. And so, pretty much what that looks like is, let's say you got $200,000 in equity and you owe $200,000 to your lender. Well, we're going to take over the mortgage, the $200,000 mortgage, but then your equity, we're going to create a note between myself and you, the seller, for the amount of that equity. And so that $200,000 equity, we can give you 5% down on that. We can give you 10% down on that. We can work out our terms, our monthly payments. And so you're still able to work the deal and use both methods. Now you want to make sure that your ROI, your return on investment, is, still, remember we talked about, what that positive cash flow looks like. You want to make sure that those numbers still align, because now not only are you paying for the mortgage that's already in place, now you're also giving the sellers an additional payment, plus the taxes, insurance, and everything else. So
Right.
sometimes with these hybrid deals, um, you'll notice that your cash flow is a little bit lower, but that's fine if you sell it on a wrap. So let's say, okay, and I'm going to break this down as simple as I can. So let's say, like this scenario right here, um, and my cash flow is $200 a month. Well, I like to cash flow $500 a month, but I'm going to go ahead and buy it. I'm going to go ahead and get it. I'm going to get it under contract. We're going to close. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn around and I'm going to sell it to another investor on a wrap, basically saying that I'm going to create another note that says maybe this buyer is going to pay me $450,000 for the property, right?
Okay.
And their monthly payment to me is going to be $700 dollars more, maybe $500 more than what my current expense is. And so in this way, now I'm pushing all ownership onto this new buyer. Now they're covering the taxes. Now they're covering insurance. Now they're paying for the first mortgage, the second mortgage, and now they're paying me, right? And so me as the original investor, I just get to cash flow whatever, whatever the numbers work out to be. And so I know that this kind of got a little bit more complex, but I just want you guys to see that there's so many ways that you can work these deals out to where you can come out on top. Just don't take no for an answer. Figure something else out
Yes.
because something will work out. If the sellers
Absolutely.
are willing to do it, make it work.
Wow. Literally, what Tilisa just broke down to us was she introduced us to seller financing and gave us the whole breakdown of that. Then she backdoored and showed us how to do a subject to and how to do all of that, how to find the deals, what to do, what to say. And then she just showed us. I hope you guys caught all this because I literally, you should see my paper. It's like full of stuff. I'm on page 2 writing all these notes down. She just broke down and told you how you could do seller financing with subject to, and then introduced you to the wrap of like wrapping all this together. And I think they call it a wrap because it does sound like a beautiful picture present, like a beautiful wrap. Let me cash flow without being heavily involved in this property.
Yep.
This is major because you're not hearing a lot of people that really know this information that can break this down to you in layman's terms where now everyone understands how to do it. And the biggest piece that she's really pushing for you is that do not go into any real estate deal with a closed mind. Be creative, think about what you're doing, and think about how you can really be creative with this. So, Tilisa, share with us, like if they come across a deal and they don't know what to do, how do they reach you to make sure that they can have someone that is knowledgeable that can be a consultant to them to help them?
Absolutely. You guys, I do not mind giving out my phone number. Reach out to me by text. My phone number is 682-340-1222. Shoot me a text, send me the property address, and yeah, let me help you work out the numbers. I do not mind. So feel free to reach out.
Literally, oh my gosh, you just showed everybody how they can become a real estate investor. They don't have to put 20% down. They don't have to put 10% down. They don't have to put any money down. Credit is not even an issue. They literally just have to know to be creative when they're talking to a potential seller about the property. And you just give us the tools of how to find these people and what to say to these people.
That's it. And if you need help underwriting, call me. If you need help talking to the seller, call me. Obviously, we're going to JV.
Right. Absolutely. And Tilisa does wholesale creative financing throughout the entire United States. So there's not one state that she is like, no, hands off. No, she wants to help you no matter where you're at. I mean, and this is something that a lot of people don't talk about. One, a lot of realtors don't talk about it because they're not very knowledgeable about this whole process.
Nope.
And all of these things are done with the title company. So you still get title policy. Now there are some things you got to know around that, but that's what Tilisa is here for to help you walk you through it.
Yep.
But this is major. Like this will change the game. And talk to us about right now with this market, how you foresee subject to seller financing wraps doing moving forward.
You guys, oh my goodness. So everybody knows that right now, I mean, interest rates are at a high. I feel like they kind of are fluctuating, but for the most part, they're at a high. So creative finance is right now currently dominating the real estate investing industry because you can negotiate the interest rates. Like
Yeah.
that right there is key. People in my circle are closing these deals with 0% interest rates every hour. Every hour. Imagine buying a property at 0% interest. Come on now.
Really? Oh my God.
Like
I'm
this
telling
is,
y'all right now, this is the gem above gems because the market is crazy. Interest rates have skyrocketed. The Feds just increased interest rates again. So if you know how to understand this creative financing piece and really know how to work it, this is where you become a millionaire within months.
come on now. Like the tools are out there, the properties are out there, the sellers are out there. You just have to be bold enough to make the phone call. But you
That's
guys have the tools now. You know where to go. You know how to find the people. You know how to get their number. You know somewhat of what to say. You may
yeah.
not know all the underwriting and all the numbers and all that, but that's what others like me are out here for. So yeah, Deba, it's a game changer in this market. I don't know how long it'll be like this, because once interest rates come back down and everybody's able to list their house for ridiculous prices, I don't know if there's going to be as many sellers that are going to be open to it. So it's like this is one of those things where it's like the window of opportunity is open right now. We don't know how long it's going to last, so get in while you can.
Yes, yes. And you really hear a lot of people say this kind of happened right around, what was that, 2007, 2008, during that market crash, during that time where people now, 10 years later, they said they made so much money because they were picking up properties, pennies on the dollar. This is that opportunity. And that opportunity was only for a short time, but it wasn't, they didn't wait till the latter when they saw other people doing it. You got to be the trend center and jump in and get started. And you got Talisa that's going to help you.
Thank you. Me, y'all, there's so many resources out there on YouTube. Like, there's no reason why you're not able to do this. And I would advise, I'm just gonna say this before we get off, I would advise agents to get educated, get educated on creative finance, because you guys are sitting on the market for 60 plus days at a time, and you could be presenting your sellers with an offer that could help them instead of sitting on the market that long. But a lot of the agents that I talk to, some of them are just not even open minded enough to even want to learn about it. But you're leaving so much money on the table, because the
Mhm.
deals that I negotiate where the down payment from my buyer is enough for the seller to pay their agent's commissions. So you still get paid as
Beautiful.
the agent.
You still get paid. You
You
just
still
got to be open minded. Wow. Thank you so much, Talisa, for just sharing all the knowledge that you have acquired over the years of seller financing, subject to, and now a hybrid. Like, oh my gosh, like this is real great gems of really taking your business to the next level. Thank you so, so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So, anyhow, you guys know how to reach out to me, but that wraps up this episode. Deba, do you have anything that you want to share with the audience before we leave?
I just want to give you guys another encouragement. Like everything that you ever wanted to do, any dreams, any aspirations, it's right there in your fingertips. We are here to help you. Remember, promotion starts from within. Reach out to us if you need anything to support. We love you and have a wonderful rest of your week.
Bye, guys.